Hi, everybody. Welcome to this Friday. We're super excited to talk about the gut microbiome today. I'm sitting here, I'm Sandy, and next to me here is Heather. We have quite a bit in common. We're both dietitians and we're both coaches on the Jeff 101 program. So we're hoping we can share quite a bit of knowledge with you today in a subject that I think deserves a whole lot more attention and is very much underrepresented. But yes, hopefully you'll take a lot out of today's session. Please swipe in and tell us that you're here. Ask us any questions you might have. Super excited to discuss this with you. So I think, Heather, we can start off. We've got a few slides that we've prepared for you. And Heather will just sort of jump into it. One of her passions as a dietitian is sort of gut health. So she's bringing a lot of expertise here to the conversation and to the discussion. And let's just kick off. We'll chat to you for those who don't know actually what a gut microbiome is. Over to you, Heather.
Oh, well, should we say hi to some of the people who've joined us? And thanks so much for the introduction, Sandy. Are you well today?
Yes, all good. All good. Happy it's Friday. It's been a long, tough week, but all good.
I'm really glad it's Friday. Hi guys, you've got lots of people joining us. That's so exciting. We've got Lynn Johnson, Shanae, hi there. Fulelani's Lionhearts, hi.
Okay, so I think probably kick off.
Let's go for it.
But I think, Heather, if you're happy to kick off and we can just chat a bit about what the gut microbiome is, then we'll get into the nitty-gritty about how we can look after our gut microbiome, and we'll answer any questions you've got. Over to you, Heather.
Great. So, guys, I'm Coach Heather, and I have a little bit of an excitement when I think about all things gut-related. It's actually such an amazing topic and it makes me very excited. And the thing is that we just don't know enough about this amazing little ecosystem that's sitting in our bodies. And because we don't know enough, we don't actually know the powerhouses that live in us. So today, hopefully, we're going to actually just kind of go through some of the main features of the gut microbiome, well, the microbiome, but specifically we're going to focus on the gut, just to give you some insight into actually what's going on in there, and also just how we can really make our gut microbiome thrive. And because we both love diet so much, the good news is that diet does play quite a big role in looking after our gut microbiome. So the two of us are going to definitely give you some tips and hopefully give you some great lessons and take-home messages. So I've popped up this infographic here. It's very small on the slide, so if you want to go and take a look at it, you can look at the APC Microbiome Institute. It's an amazing microbiome in numbers infographic, which gives us a little bit of just a quantified measurement of just how amazing our gut microbiome is, or our microbiome. And so there's lots of infographics out there, but this one is really special because it actually shows us that we've got almost 100 trillion microbes living in and on our body. So more microbes than the stars in the Milky Way. So that's something to really take your head to try and fathom that out. But we've got around 200,000 human genes and at least 2 million microbial genes. So we have to ask the question, is it its own ecosystem, and who actually is running the show? Would you agree? So we've got about...
that freaks me out a little bit. Just to think sort of, are we human or are we bacterial? Like if you do the maths, it almost seems like, there's a little bit of human and a whole lot of bacteria and microbiome.
Absolutely, and it's hard to think that there's so many, and that actually they play such an influential role in our health and in disease. So we've got around 95% of our microbiota that is actually found in our gastrointestinal tract. So you can see that our gastrointestinal tract is actually kind of like the hub of where everything's happening, but we have bacteria everywhere. So our microbiome represents our bacteria, our viruses, our fungi. It's basically all of those classed together, even archaea and protozoa, so all of them together in one kind of ecosystem, which is the microbiome. But because so much of our microbiome is located in our gastrointestinal tract, you can see why there's so much interest in research around the gut microbiome and how that impacts on our health and disease. It's actually thought that around 90% of diseases can be linked in some way back to the gut and the health of the microbiome. So you can see that that's quite a big stat there. So we can influence our gut microbiome and thereby hopefully influence our relationship with health and disease. And we can maybe just say that also each individual has a unique gut microbiome. So it's very personal to you. It actually is as unique as your fingerprint. So Sandy, your microbiome is different to my microbiome, and therefore our profile of health and disease is going to be different too.
Absolutely. And I think what's quite interesting there is that now more and more research actually over the last few years has been happening specifically around the gut microbiome and creating sort of profiles of bacteria of the microbiome and linking that to different disease states, but linking it to different conditions within the body. And there's also been quite a bit of research and sort of research into this area. It sounds quite revolting, but fecal transplants, where you literally sort of get a donor, hopefully someone close to you, they give a sample, and that sample is washed clean and digested by you. And they've seen, especially there's a lot that's been done in animal research, and they've shown that literally just by transplanting or creating a new profile of microbiota in the gut, the consequences are incredible. So somebody potentially who had problems with their gut, had chronic diarrhea, they've shown now that by literally transplanting and basically creating a new profile of microbiota, that person's symptoms are relieved, which is hugely powerful stuff when you think about it, that the effects of people often think, oh, I've been sort of dealt some unlucky genes in life. Poor me, what can I do about it? But if you have a look at this picture and this scenario, you can do a lot about it. If these bugs are sort of running the show, there are so many ways that you can change the profile into a more positive profile with positive health.
Absolutely, and we really hold thumbs that the research keeps growing, and there's big projects that start up like the Human Microbiome Project, the Gut Project, where you can actually send samples of your stools, which is your waste products, and actually send it through, and they can analyze just all the different types of bugs and all the different types of bacteria and the microbiome that's present in your personal profile, and allowing us to find out more about just what is actually a really good, healthy microbiome.
And I think, just on this topic, I think we do a bit of catch up ourselves. I remember we've got a Labrador who, we'll just say it as it is. She loves to eat poo, and not her own poo. She'll go out for a walk and she will find the most revolting looking poo ever. And I remember saying to the vet, like, this is disgusting. What is she doing? And he explained to me at that point, he said, actually, she's quite advanced because she's trying to repopulate her gut microbiota. He said, obviously, she's not necessarily selecting the right ones to do the transplant. You ideally want to sort of clean it up and get a good profile. But that's basically what she's aiming to do. It's so interesting. So I think this concept has been around for a long time. And us humans are doing a bit of catch up now, but it's really interesting research.
But definitely don't try this at home kind of thing. Let's wait for the research.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Heather. I'm very glad you mentioned that.
Right, shall we move on to our next slide?
Okay.
So this is really just what does a microbiome do? Do you want to explain that, Sandy?
Absolutely. And I think we could probably spend days on this topic, but we've tried to summarize it a little bit for you. Just in terms of the benefits of a healthy microbiome and why we want to make sure that we've got the right profile of microbes in our guts. Sort of the top one there you'll see is immune system. So you get the good guys, not so good guys, and the downright bad guys. And if you need to get the right profile, so for example, if you're promoting growth of the not so healthy bacteria, they're going to sort of shunt out the good guys, which means that that's going to affect your immune system. So that's your first line of course, sort of immune system wise, is in the gut. So we really want that system to be strong and working well. Then also there's influences on the brain, and I think Heather, you can chat more about sort of the gut and brain axis and we can go into a bit more detail just now on that. But there's impacts on the liver, the kidney, the skin, vaginal tract as well. And I'm sure sort of you'll know there as well if you've had problems with yeast infections and that type of thing. It's really important, and you'll often be prescribed a probiotic as well. But it's important to look after all those bacteria and make sure that the healthy guys are flourishing. There's also then, you'll see that they have an impact, and there's certain compounds that these bacteria make. They're called short-chain fatty acids. And these amazing sort of compounds play a role in so many aspects of health. They control blood sugar levels. They've got different influences on enzymes in the liver, which then controls the blood sugar levels. They also control circulating body fat. So they promote metabolism of the body fat as well. They help with weight management, which is obviously huge. And then there's all sort of, as a result of all of this has impacts on heart health and general heart health. So huge amount of importance that sits with these little bacteria and microbes in the gut. I don't know if you want to jump in here, Heather, and chat a bit about that, the connection between the gut and the brain and serotonin.
Yeah. Well, there's an amazing link between what happens up in our brain and what happens in our gut. So much so that we've actually got the gut being known as the second brain. And the reason why that it's been known as the second brain is because we've got what we call a bidirectional pathway of neural connections between what's happening in your gut and what happens in your brain. And the two of them communicate with each other. So if there's any changes in your gut, it can be mirrored it can be messages sent to your brain, which can cause a response. And this bidirectional pathway is so important because our gut bacteria are also responsible for producing neurochemicals, and that actually 95% of our body's supply of serotonin is actually made in our gut. And you know that serotonin is a hormone that's really a neurotransmitter that's really important in influencing our mood and influencing our gastrointestinal activity. So you might know, like when you're having a really stressed day, sometimes when you've got an important meeting or you've got a big exam coming up, and you feel it in your tummy. It's almost like your tummy's a little bit anxious, and that could also be part of these neural pathways that kind of go around in a circuit loop. So we definitely see that with things like irritable bowel syndrome, where the psychological component of our health plays such a big role in this condition, because if you haven't got if you've got anxiety or any stress, it can actually aggravate your symptoms. And that's because of this link between the gut and the brain. And because of that link, it can actually influence our whole body.
So I think I'm
getting excited. Getting a bit excited here because I find the connection so fascinating.
There's a huge amount of passion there. It's fantastic. But I think also the message there is one, often we can't necessarily control the stress levels. And I think that's a huge thing. I mean, we all struggle with that. Life is stressful, life is busy. But what you want to do to make sure that sort of the outcome of all of that is okay is to look after those microbes. You want to at least do what you can, what you've got control over, you need to work on. So look after those microbes. And yes, there will be stressful situations where that's going to aggravate your gut, and especially if you have IBS, it's going to make the situation worse. But if you're starting off on a strong point, sort of strong foot, the front foot is what I'm trying to say. If you're starting off sort of strong by having a healthy profile of bacteria, of microbes, all the better. So I think that's quite important, is that yes, you might be prone to sort of the effects of stress in your gut, and I think so many people are. But if you take care of the microbes and you make sure that the good guys are flourishing, you're definitely going to be on a winning path.
Definitely. Yeah, and I guess also saying if you're not necessarily going to take the stress away, but as I'll mention later, stress does also impact on our gut microbiome, but you might also need to look at ways of managing that. And that's why I guess Jeff is so great, because we're always looking at those three components. We're looking at nutrition, fitness, and mindfulness, so our mental well-being as well.
That's a very good point. It makes such a difference if you address all three factors. Okay, so I don't know if we'll just sort of carry on here a little bit more about what the microbiome does, why it's so important as well. Like we mentioned before, the short-chain fatty acids, so actually those compounds that serves as energy for your gut cells. So they function optimally if they're well fed as well. So your bacteria converts fiber, and they convert the food or the energy from fiber into a form that can be used by those gut cells. Very, very important. Also then that has an effect on gut motility and function. Some of you might sort of heard the leaky gut phrase before. You've got a layer of mucus on the cells, and you need that to be kept healthy and well. These bacteria play a huge part in doing that. And again, if that layer is not sort of 100%, if it's not the way it should be, you're going to let in pathogens. You're going to let in disease.
The nasties.
Yeah, absolutely, and your immune system will be seriously affected there. So another important reason to keep everything healthy and to have the right guys flourishing. You get more acid bacteria in the gut as well, and certain foods and sort of lack of foods can sometimes promote those guys, and they can eat away at that mucus lining that protects the gut cells. And then there's also the vitamins. Vitamin K is a good example, and the B vitamins that these guys produce as well, and we know how important those are for good health. Okay, so I think you sort of alluded to a lot of this before, but maybe we can go into a little bit more detail about what we can do in order to look after it, and just how we can minimize stress, how we can sort of optimize healthy foods, what we need to be looking out for, basically.
Yeah, and I think it's important here just to also mention that, by all means, I have a very big interest, but, the research around this area is growing, and we really just don't know enough. And what we do know is just changing every minute. The research is just, as we talk, the new research is coming out, and it's very exciting. But also, we need to also remember that we don't actually know what does a healthy profile look like, and we don't know enough about the gut. But what we do know is that there are different factors that can affect our gut microbiome. So the first one is diet, and the exciting thing is that diet is one of the most relevant factors that can influence our gut microbiome. So they've done a lot of research on different populations and how diet can impact the different changes in our diet. And what we'll talk about later is that we find that when your diet is diverse and varied, that is going to lead to a more diverse and varied microbiome. So the good news is that we can really manipulate our diet to try and help us. From the research we have available, we'll tell you how to do that in a few slides. Obviously, things like pharmaceuticals. So we're in a westernized world where we have a lot more exposure to antibiotics. We have a lot more exposure to medications. So these are all going to impact on our gut microbiome, and maybe in a bit of a negative way. But it actually all starts right in utero. So right when you're in your mommy's tummy, that's where it all starts. We used to think that it was sterile in your mom's tummy, but actually we now know that things like the umbilical cord and the placenta, they all have different profiles of a microbiome. And when you then go through the birthing process, whether you have a vaginal birth or a C-section, will determine what population, how you're actually populated with microbiomes based on the microbiome in the vaginal canal versus whether you have the microbiome in the operating theatre. We've also got our life stages as well. Our microbiome changes, particularly changing as we get older. It's a little bit sort of, as you get older, there's a bigger difference compared to, say, younger adults. And then also where you live, so your environment. So we've got certain sort of rural populations having a different microbiome and possibly arguably more diverse and more rich compared to those who don't who live maybe in a more westernized, urbanized environment, and the farming methods and also what people are eating and what they're exposed to in terms of climate can actually affect your microbiome. And all of these are positive and negative. So some of these we're still trying to figure out. And then, of course, stress. And stress doesn't only include things like your psychological stress. It also can impact things that it can also mean things like exercise. So, we do know a little bit about very high intensity exercise does impact on your gut microbiome versus regular exercise, which has a very positive effect on your gut microbiome. So you can see where we're alluding here to things like exercise and good mental well-being and diet being all things that you can control compared to things like how you were delivered, for example, which might not be in your control. So, I mean, I don't know, Sandy, do you want to add anything to that, or you want to just move straight on?
Absolutely. And I think for me, the big part in that, what I find with many of my clients as well, sort of the Jeff 101 program clients, is that the variety of foods is a struggle, even for myself personally. I mean, I know they recommend that you aim for sort of that 30 different types of veggies in a week. And for me, that's like, wow, that's quite a lot. We have our standards, especially with the kiddies. I mean, there's no ways that they're going to enjoy a variety of veggies like that. I wish. So that and the reason for that is because every single vegetable, every single food has a different profile of fiber as well, and antioxidants, vitamins as well. But to get that full picture of fiber, you need to have and eat a varied diet. And I think that's a big challenge for everybody. And if you can sort of change one thing, I would say that's a good focus area, is to try and increase the variety of vegetables, of fruit that you eat. And we so easily fall into the pattern of having the same old. You sort of have that standard shopping list, and it's like bananas, grapes, strawberries, got the peppers, got the lettuce, the cucumber. But I would urge you to sort of jump out of your comfort zone and actually try a whole lot of new different vegetables, different fruits that you haven't necessarily tried before.
Absolutely. I see there's a question here from Shani, who's just said, how do you know if your microbiomes are at a specific level, and then you have a base to work off to fix? And I think that's the tricky part. We don't really know what your ideal microbiome should be, but we do know that certain bacteria and certain profiles are better than others. So like certain bacteria give us more positive health benefits. So that's the challenge, is that we don't really know what is the ideal, and we also don't know necessarily what Sandy's microbiome is doing compared to mine. So that is tricky.
But I think there, if I can jump in as well, Heather, I think there as well, you'll kind of know. So when you're in a good space, you sort of, from a weight management point of view, you're in a good place. From a mental mindset point of view, you're in a good place. And from digestive symptoms, I mean, we all know, and not everybody likes to speak about the digestive symptoms. They're not sort of something you necessarily talk at the table over dinner. But I think all of those things give you an indication of whether or not your gut microbiome is in a good way, or in a good state. I think you almost assume, and it's never static, and I think that's an important thing for us to mention as well, is that it's constantly changing depending on what you're eating, depending on your stress levels, depending on you traveling. It's constantly changing. So you're not going to have sort of one profile for life by any means, and that's positive because that means you can make a difference. So if you make an effort to do everything good, basically, to look after your gut, so reduce your stress levels as far as you can, exercise, eat enough fiber, don't eat, and we could probably spend a day on this, but don't eat too many artificial sweeteners or foods that have got artificial sweeteners in them. There's a whole different story there. But look after your gut, have a variety of vegetables. Then I think that's what we can control. And by doing that, one can assume that you are improving the profile that you have, the profile of microbes. I hope that makes sense.
Well, shall we pop on the next slide, and then we can summarize the best ways to... But I think that's a really good point, Sandy, because sometimes when you're feeling run down, you may have more a profile of bacteria that are more inflammatory, and they that means that you might have to, you're unwell and you're not feeling well, then you might go on a course of antibiotics or you might be on medication, and then it's kind of a vicious cycle. But on the other side of that, if you're exercising regularly and you're managing your stress levels and you're eating well, you know that you are flourishing internally and externally. So I think that's really great advice.
Okay, so Heather, do you take us through the slide? It sort of almost summarizes a lot of what we've chatted about already.
Yeah.
There's a big push towards sort of more plant-based foods to look after one's gut. So yeah, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that picture of the rainbow is probably the main take-home message, is that we found that in the research with communities that have a very plant-based diet, they have a diet that is very low in refined sugars and processed foods. They eat a lot of sort of, they do eat, red meat and animal products, but not as much. But they eat a lot, like almost 30 different types of plant-based foods I mean, some of them would eat more than 30. They have a much more diverse and varied microbiome, which we know is a health indicator. So the main message is get a rainbow of colors on your plate as much as possible. Eat a healthy, balanced diet, which means, as you said, Sandy, just lots of different variety. Your gut loves to have lots of different things. If you stick to strawberry, apple, strawberry, apple, you're not getting the goodness from all of the different variety of fruits and vegetables. And plant-based doesn't only mean fruit and veg. It also could be, as you said, your plant-based proteins, your nuts and your seeds, even herbs, dill and parsley and mint. Those are all sort of part of that whole spectrum, and then all alongside that is really focusing on fiber-rich foods, and they all sort of kind of tie into one, really. So fiber is the roughage that we need in our diet, and it also comes from your fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, your beans, your lentils, your pulses. And I guess and this is really what we try and encourage people, is try new recipes, try things out of your comfort zone, as Sandy mentioned, that we want to really not stick to that old routine. Like, even if it's just one different vegetable in the week, that's a win.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And it's a process. I mean, like we've said so often before as well, we don't expect people to turn into superhumans overnight. We don't encourage it at all. In fact, we'd be a bit two-faced. But just gradually build on your habits. So say to yourself, okay, you know what? This week, if you literally just have broccoli and carrot every day, so I'm going to have 5 different veggies. Or I never eat legumes, I'm going to throw in some chickpeas. I'm going to have my roasted chickpeas as a snack. Just slowly add to the mix, and then build on that. So then the next week you're going to add something else, maybe use more herbs in your cooking. So I think that's important as well, because as soon as we put too much pressure on ourselves, then we say, oh, it's too much, and everything falls to the side. And that's also quite a big message that I give my clients on the one-on-one program, is that yes, we'll eventually get you to superhuman status, but not overnight. It's really important that you take yourself small steps.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And I think if we think about small steps, it becomes more achievable. So set those SMART goals that allow you to say, okay, well, if I've had banana all week, I'm now going to try something different.
Heather, just to jump in there, we've got a question there from Raquel asking about superfoods. If there are any specific superfoods that would help? I think there we've sort of alluded to the plant foods, and there are specific foods that have more of a prebiotic status, which means they're a fuel for the bacteria, for the microbes, and something like you see from the picture there, the artichokes, asparagus, they would probably, in this sense of the word, be considered a bit of a superfood, or for the microbes, in the microbes world, they would be a superfood. Would you agree, Heather? Any input on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think the message is always a bit of everything. We try not to class things as superfoods, but you're right. Foods that have this natural ability to be almost like the petrol for the car, petrol for for the microbiome, the fuel, we can focus more on those. So absolutely. Your prebiotics are things like, as you said, naturally would be things like your high fiber foods and your fruits and vegetables, etc. So you could focus on that. And then there's also foods that have a sort of higher antioxidant component and polyphenols, which are shown in the research to actually help our gut a little bit more. So that's like things like your tea and your dark chocolate and your red wine, all those, your fruits, your seeds. They also have an ability to create a better profile of our microbiome. So you can incorporate those things into your diet as well.
I mean, I think if I can jump in again there, Heather, as well. I mean, you can see how my face lit up when you mentioned the dark chocolate and the wine. Guess what's happening tonight? But I think what I just mentioned there as well is that you get foods that are low in calories and you get foods that are high in calories. So when we're watching sort of total calorie intake, obviously the vegetables, the sort of the non-starchy vegetables, the asparagus and artichokes of the world would be a good place to start if you're watching your calorie intake. There's definitely place for chocolate. You know that I feel strongly about that. So I'm not saying don't have it, but just watch the portions then. So it's not sort of free access to have a slab of chocolate every night. I think you would do better by having a few more plants, sort of non-starchy plants included in your meal.
And there comes the balance again. So that balance is important. So you know that these foods do give us benefit, but they lose their benefit potentially if in excess, and that's where that balance comes in.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think we sort of, for time, we're running out of a bit of time, but if you've got any more questions, post them. If we don't get around to answering them, you're very welcome to DM either.
I think there was one more slide that we can just chat about the probiotics.
Absolutely. So let's take to the slide over here. Okay, Heather, would you like to chat about?
No, I thought, no talk is complete without touching on probiotics, because I'm sure that there's lots of questions about that. But basically, probiotics have a lot of shelf space in that there's a lot of research around them, and it's like a lot of, in the industry, probiotics are quite marketed. The good news is that they are safe, so we can use probiotics, and probiotics are basically the live bacteria that you would put in like a capsule form or like a sprinkle. The good news is that they're safe and that we could include them in our diet, but unfortunately we need more research to say this is the exact probiotic you need to take and this is how much you need to take, because we don't know enough. But we do know that it is something that if you're feeling that you are a little bit run down or you're feeling just not yourself, that you can take an over-the-counter probiotic if you wanted to, and we wouldn't recommend you take it forever if it's not doing anything for you. So usually we recommend follow the manufacturer's recommendations and try it for a month, see if it helps. But because we don't know what the best microbiome is and how these bacteria are even surviving or influencing, we can't say that's the exact one you need to take. However, you can include it in things like live yogurts where they have live bacteria there, and certain foods like some cheeses and fermented foods. You can actually include them if you like them in your diet to actually give you a good profile, because they have the microbes in them. And as I said, because the research is still, not as great as we want it to be, it's something that could be beneficial and you could include. So I don't know, Sandy, if you're familiar with the kombucha and kimchi, sauerkraut, all of those fermented foods that are out there.
And for me, it's almost a better idea to get the probiotics if you can from your food, because you're getting a nice punch of prebiotics there as well. So you're getting the bugs and then you're getting the food for the bugs as well.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. So you opt for the ones where there's quite a bit of fiber, and obviously yogurt, there's benefits of yogurt in terms of protein, calcium. So yeah, I'm very much if you can get it from your food kind of gal, then go that route.
Food first.
I believe there's a place for probiotics, and like you say, Heather, very much sort of a short stint. And you must realize though that it's a bit of a transient thing. So you're sort of repopulating your bacteria, but you can't just leave them and then eat your normal sort of diet without any fruit and fiber. They're not going to last long. So yeah, you definitely take the probiotics, but then focus on the food that you feed them as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a nice summary. I think the main message, take-home message is, hey, Sandy, you want to pop on the take-home. We didn't speak about that. Take-home messages. There we go.
But let's pop to this page. I think this, if you take nothing away, take these 3 messages. Okay, so the first one, I'll jump in there. The first one is just just know that you can make a huge impact through food, through eating the right foods. And you want to, because your gut microbiome basically runs the show. I mean, more and more of the research is showing that. If you look after your microbiome, you're looking after yourself. And it's often the place we've got most control over. We can control their genes, not necessarily always have control over our own genes. And the other one that links closely with that is just focus on eating a healthy, balanced, and very diverse diet, like we've been mentioning now. It's really important. Variety is the spice of life. But you really need, it's a bit hallmarkish there, but really, there's a lot of meaning behind that. You need to try new things, go out of your comfort zone, try new foods. And then, of course, the regular exercise and lifestyle balance. We all know the benefits of exercise, and also in terms of just trying to manage your stress levels, putting aside some me time every day, which I know is difficult. I struggle myself with that a lot. But it is so important. That connection between the brain and the gut is a powerful one. And so hopefully you've got a bit from our session today. Hopefully it makes sense. And I think it's action points that you can easily implement in action.
Yeah, and just one last thing I think is important as well is that just because the plant-based diet is beneficial doesn't mean you have to now cut out all your animal sources of food. You don't have to go vegan, for example. Yes, there is some benefit, but we're bringing back moderation and balance to it. So it doesn't necessarily mean you can't have any animal products. It's about that balance and trying to focus more on plant-based where you can, but having a good varied diet is the key message.
Absolutely. I see here any plant-based sources of probiotics. So I think they would be mentioned the sauerkraut, the kimchi. Those would be good options. I'm not sure if we've actually got a recipe for either of those. If not, we'll look at adding some to the Jeff library of recipes, and you can try it out.
Great. I don't know, we have time for one more question, yeah?
I think we're going to be kicked off soon, guys. But yes, let's have a look if you've got any more. But please feel free to send us some direct messages as well. We'd love to catch up with you. There's a question here on sweeteners. And sort of how much could cause gut health as an example per day. So there again, it's very difficult to say that I can't give you a specific amount. If you're having sort of one sweetener and 1 cup of tea per day, it's unlikely to do any harm. My issue there sort of sweetness is that it's twofold as well. It also drives your craving for sweet and sugary foods. So sometimes it's then a bit difficult just to limit it to your 1 portion of sweetener per day. But I think that's a topic all on its own, Heather, and maybe we can put together another.
Yeah. No problem. Yeah, artificial sweeteners, they have their place, but as well, there's a little bit of research around them not being that beneficial in terms of gut health. But again, we look forward to more research in the area to guide you further. But thanks for listening, everybody. It was lovely.
We look forward to chatting further. If you've got any questions, please just feel free to message us. Have a lovely Friday. Cheers.
Bye.